Hello and welcome to the second episode of the Shanty Knits podcast. My name is Chantal. I am Shanty_D on Instagram and Shanty Knits on Ravelry. If you want to chat with me on either of those places, I'd be happy to do so with you. So feel free to shoot me a message or just leave a comment below and I'll get back to you. Today I have one finished object, I have a couple of test knits that I'm going to talk about, and a work in progress, as well as some special shout outs at the end. So we shall start. So this is my finished object. If you were with me in episode 1, you know that this is the Ryu sweater by Audrey of the Yarn Flakes. I did finish the test knit. It comes out on, the due date is March 1st, so it should come out shortly after that. The last time I spoke with you, I was talking about transferring this beautiful side texture pattern up onto the sleeves, and you can tell that I did get that done. I don't know how well you're going to be able to see that, but I'll definitely put a picture in. When I did take some pictures, my dog had the pleasure of photobombing me by using the bathroom in the background, but hopefully I'll get some pictures done either today or tomorrow before this podcast goes up for sure, so I can stick those in there and show this texture pattern to you if you can't see it very well. But I did get it to transfer almost seamlessly up the sleeve from the side. And basically all I did was pick up stitch for stitch underneath the underarm, and then for the next row you just knit plain, and the row after that I half the stitches that I cast on for the underarm, because when you cast on for picking up the sleeves, it's definitely a smaller amount than what this stitch pattern is. So I half that stitch pattern for what I picked up, and then I decrease that on the next round, knit plain one knit on the next round, and then I half the half, if that makes sense, and then decrease that. And then when you do that, you should be back pretty close back to the stitch count that you're supposed to have when you pick up the small number underneath the arm. And you can just decrease normally for the arm. I did a slightly longer arm, but I don't decrease fully. I like more of a looser wrist cuff here because I wear a lot of bangles, and if you have a tighter sleeve, the bangles either get caught or they don't bangle-y enough for my like. So I didn't do full fitted sleeve, but fitted enough for my taste. Basic raglan construction. As you know, I did the cardigan version. I did do a machine steek in the front. I had to do one of these sides twice because when I did the first side, it came out perfect. And then when I did the second side, I must have got like too proud of myself because the stitches were a little bit tight, so I had to rip back the stitches carefully and then re-machine knit one of the sides. But I don't remember which side it is, and I don't think you can really tell that I had to rip back on one of the sides or not. I did a 7-stitch steek panel in the front, and then for the collar and the neckband, I did a 2x2 rib. I did do, can you see that? Just barely. So I did do some short row shaping to give it just a slight shawl collar, but it's only about 4 or 5 short rows that I did. And then instead of doing like the super stretchy bind off in the front, I did an I-cord edging, which I really, really like. I think it finished it out really nicely. It is a 50-50 alpaca blend, and it's from the Yarn Undyed company that I was speaking about on the last episode. I did hand dye this yarn, and you can see I did Grace's of the Babbles Traveling Yarns helico knitting, and you can kind of see some of the skeins did come out darker, and this is a little bit darker on camera than it is in real life. Let's see. So that's kind of truer to the color in real life, so you can't really tell unless you're really close up to it to see. Like, I didn't manage my skeins on the sleeve very well. I had 5 skeins total, and I thought I wouldn't need the 5th skein for the sleeve. Clearly, I was mistaken. But when you do that, when you do like a cardigan version, you can use almost all of your yarn. So this is how much I have from that 5th skein of the ball for that yarn. So I have enough for like fixing any stitches that may get caught on bangles or anything like that. So that's how much I have left out of all the yarn that I dyed up for this sweater. I do like my pinks and my purples and reds, so I think I'll get a lot of use out of this cardigan. Other than that, I think that's all that I have to say about that. I'll show you the raglan seam right here, and then again that underarm. I'm super proud of this arm, if you can't tell. Like, I only had to redo it like twice, because when I picked it up the first time, it was just off by the slightest. And although I'm not a perfectionist, I thought I could do better on the sleeve. So I ripped it back and then picked it up again. I do most of my sleeves 2x2, or 2 at a time. So when I picked up this first sleeve and I went over to the second sleeve was perfect, and the first sleeve was just off slightly. So I went back and redid the first sleeve so I could get that it would match with the first sleeve, with the second sleeve perfectly. And I'm actually really liking it. Although I may not be able to, I may be the only one that knows it's there unless I'm constantly going like this, but I love it. I think it adds a great detail to it. When the pattern is released, I will put everything that I did on my project page. I usually keep pretty detailed notes, mainly because I am a test knitter, and most of the time people are knitting this for the first time, so they want to know what you did and how it was done. It has, you won't be able to see, but in the pattern it has it's not a high-low hem, it's like a scooped hem, so the back is a scoop and the front is a scoop, but the back has more of a dramatic scoop, so maybe it is a high-low hem. I'm not fashion technical at all, but it has a very nice hemline. And as I was saying in the last podcast, if you take all the modifications in this sweater, as well as doing it in like a cardigan version, you can have like 4 or 5 different sweaters with the same pattern. So it is a very useful pattern. Definitely bang for your buck once it is released. At March 1st release date, and she usually releases them pretty soon after when we submit for the test, so I would imagine pretty close to that. What I'll do for this is link to her Ravelry store, and then once the pattern is released, once you click on the link down in the description box, you should go right to the Ravelry store, and depending on how it's laid out, it should be right there for you. But it is the Ryu sweater. It's not a cardigan. It's called a Ryu sweater, R-I-U, and it's by Audrey of the Yarn Flakes. But again, I'll link that down at the bottom. I think that's all that, because I talked about it last podcast, so I think that's all that I want to mention for that. My beautiful, as I was stating in the last podcast, I love these little brooches, or if there's a better word for them, the little tie in the front, because I don't like buttons or to button them up. It's just not what I like in a cardigan. And oh, let me show you. See that flowiness? Isn't it awesome? Like I said, I'm going to get so much wear out of this. This has so much drape, so much flow. That alpaca is just beautiful. Beautiful drape. So you can admire my hard seam stitches. So we're going to move into 2 test knits that I have and 1 whip. But first, let me tell you the tea that I'm drinking and show you my wonderful character mug, because I liked it in the last podcast and I think I want to make it a thing. So this is my octopus mug. It's pink. And the tea that I'm drinking today is, it's called Tea for 3. Kind of see that better. Tea for 3, and it's organic, sustainable, and fair trade. All the ingredients in her teas are organic, but she is closing her tea shop. She's still doing her other ventures, but she is closing her tea shop. And if she has some still available, because she was given a significant discount, I think it was anywhere from 30 to 50% on certain teas. If she still has teas available, I'll link below. If not, I won't bother to link it below, because I don't want to waste your time clicking on something that you won't be able to get. So in this one, it's called Lemon Myrtle. It is organic black tea and organic lemon myrtle leaves. I like it, especially in the summer, but I do drink it year round. But in the summer, it's kind of like when you drink water and you have that squeeze of lemon in it. It has just that slight lemon taste that makes it refreshing. And if you ice it, it's the best thing since Betty White, as Chevy would say. Chevis from, I don't remember the name of her podcast, but she made a very good point about Betty White and sliced bread in her last podcast. And while we're on the subject of tea, I want to show you a gift that one of my mother-in-laws gave me. I'm not a polygamist. My husband just has step-parents, so I have 2 mother-in-laws and 2 father-in-laws, I would say. And this is a tea mug that she gave me as a congratulations. I'll have to pause here in a minute to close the curtain because I'm not getting the best light. But it has a matching plate. It's a set of 2, and this is one of my teacups that no one's allowed to drink out of because I have, I guess you would call it a bookshelf, but it doesn't house books. It houses like antique style tea mugs and tea sets, and I do have like I'm not sure if it is stainless steel, but it's like a stainless steel type teapot, and it's an antique. I got it from a thrift store. Great place to find antique teaware. But I got it from a thrift store, and on the legs and on the handle it has like an antique floral lace design, and it looks old-timey, and I love it to death. So that's one of the things in my bookshelf, my tea bookshelf, as well as I have a tea set from Japan and a tea set from Italy, and some other various teaware in there, but those are the wares that no one's allowed to drink out of. They just are there for display. I don't have kids, so I don't have to worry about anyone breaking them or running by and breaking them. I do have to worry about dog tails, but other than that, we're good to go. Let me fix this light, and then we will talk about my test knits. So just give me. Alright, so for test knits, hopefully the lighting is a little bit better than you. I think it is on camera, but the screen's like this big, so I have to like squint and do a weird face to try to see what's going on the camera, but I think that's a little bit better. Let me show you this tea set one more time in case you didn't. Not too bad. But that is just gorgeous. Just old-timey teaware. And I love when the teacup can fit inside the saucer perfectly. Doesn't move. That's brilliant. Tea sets don't come like that anymore. They just come with like salad plates and mugs. That's probably why I don't have them. I have character mugs, because if there's no point in them not being able to sit in a tea saucer, then why just drink out of a plain mug? Ramble. Let's go into the test knits. So if you remember the last time, I was telling you that Audrey didn't have any more test knitting coming up. I was very wrong, because I want to say about 3 or 4 days after I'd made that statement, I got an email saying, hey, call for test knitters. And I'm like, yeah, I guess I'll be doing that and putting my sparkling leaves to the side. But this one is called the Diomir sweater. It's a crop top, but I am making it a cropped cardigan. There's my steek line. It has color work on the bottom, and then it'll have color work on the bottom of the sleeves as well. I was thinking of making 3/4 sleeves for this one, but I think I'll just do full sleeves because I don't want to do the math. To figure out where I'm going to start the color work and then figure out how it will look in relation to the arm, I'll just do full sleeves. I'm not gonna fuss and faff over it. But for the color work part of it, see if I can stretch this out on the needle so you can kind of see it a little bit better. For the color work part of it, I did the reverse. So basically, where you see the dark, it's supposed to be light, and where you see the light, it's supposed to be dark. Because I'm doing a cardigan version, and I'm going to use this lovely yarn. by Hue Loco. Pro tip: when your dryer eats your socks, turn them into cake holders, because instead of worrying about where that other sock went, just repurpose the sock. That's what I do. After about 2-3 cycles, if I haven't found the sock, it turns into a yarn cake ball. And this is a hospital sock, so it wasn't even anything special. I also have another pro tip for you. I buy one pair of sock. Always the same sock. You'll never have to match socks if you always buy the same exact sock every time you need new socks. 2 pro tips. 2 for 1. But this is the contrast that I'm using, and I want to do that on the collar and button band. So I didn't want to blow out the color work with too much of that dark color. So hopefully if it comes out the way that I think it will, it'll look just perfect in the blending of the colors. The orange is another one of my hand-dyed yarns. This one is a non-superwash wool. And I did do helico knitting on this one. And I just want to point out the difference in when you're dyeing superwash and non-superwash wool. You can see the difference in the different skeins in this one, but you can barely see the difference in the different skeins on this one. It looks a little bit more blown out in the camera than in real life, but non-superwash wool takes up the yarn, takes up the dye way better than superwash wool. So that's when you get the differences in the colors that vary greatly. These 2 were dyed the exact same method. So what I do is, we're going to go on a dyeing tangent. I was going to hold it off to the end, but it seems like a perfect time to talk about it. So what I do for my hand-dyed yarn is I make up these little bottles with the dye inside them, and I usually try to do 2 skeins for every bottle, and if I have enough bottles, I'll do like an extra bottle, but I'll set them up all together, and then I'll do like 2 drops of yellow, 2 drops of blue, and then make whatever color I'm doing, so I know pretty much that they have the same amount of dye and that they are the same colors that's within each bottle. And then I'll throw them into a pot and just sprinkle this in the, well, I'll sprinkle this in the pot first, and then put the 2 skeins in the pot. And depending on how many skeins I have, I may have 2, 3, 4 pots, but 2 skeins per bottle in the pot, and about, I want to say it's a 2 cups, so 4 cups of water in the pot that I use, and throw those in there. And again, dyed the same exact way, but some of them came out just slightly darker than some of the other ones in the same pot. So like I would get a lighter skein and a darker skein in the same pot, and it's just the way that superwash absorbs the color. So with superwash, you'll be able to get more brilliant, vibrant speckles, but in non-superwash, you probably won't be able to do that. I use, not natural dyeing, food safe dye. So I use food safe dyeing, food coloring, and I'll show you the kind that I use. But I use a food coloring for my dyeing, so I don't have to use like separate pots or anything like that. I want to try acid dyes maybe later on in the year, like in summertime when I can go outside and wear my mask and everything like that, but it's wintertime and I don't go outside in the wintertime. But later on in the year, if I do some experimenting with acid dye, I'll definitely try to take you on that trip with me. But the best way I found for speckles and superwash is Kool-Aid. And so you just take your Kool-Aid and you sprinkle it in a spoon, and you kind of do like a flicking action over the yarn. And that is the best way that I have found with superwash wool to do speckles. You're not going to get very vibrant speckles with non-superwash just because of the way that it absorbs the dye. I learned this the hard way, so I'm sharing this information with you so you don't have to learn the hard way. if you are looking for dyes and you're kind of on a budget, look after holidays. So like Valentine's is coming up here soon. After Valentine's Day is passed, they might have like some Valentine's cookie set that has dyes in them. Get the dye that comes with the cookie set that's probably 50, 60, 70% off, and you have a cheap red dye that you've gotten. The dye that I use, I get off at Amazon, and it's U.S. Cake Supply, so it's cake dye. But I like this one because inside the box, you have all the different dyes, but they have their color marker on top of the lid. So you don't have to take it out and look or read what it is. It's all right there on the color lid. And then some of the other, like, I forget, McCormick, that's what it is. McCormick has different color tops. So, like, if you have a red dye, it's going to have a red top. If you have green dye, it's going to have a green top. But if you're doing, like, big bulk cake, fondant type dyes, I like it because of that, where you can just kind of pick what's going on in there. I got that off of Amazon. It comes in, I think, 12, 24, and 36 or 48 packs. If you're good at blending colors, then you can probably get away with just the 12 pack and then make your own colors. They are a small amount, but at the same time, I fill that probably this full of water, and then that last small portion at the top is usually left for dye, and it makes a pretty vibrant color. So you don't have to use an extreme amount of dye to get a vibrant color, especially when you're doing superwash wool. Non-superwash, you might have to add a little bit more dye just because of that rate of absorption, but non-superwash, you'll get a beautiful and more vibrant color than when you with superwash. I did bring the last skein I have to show you. So this one is that non-superwash that I have. And you can kind of see, like, there's not that much variegation in the skein. Whereas this one is a superwash. And you can see how much more tonal that is. And there's no true white spots, like I think it's showing up on white on the camera, but it's just a lighter pink that it is, or mauve, whatever you want to call it. But you can tell the difference in that tonalness that you get in the skein. The orange is non-superwash, the mauve is superwash. And you can see that difference in the tonal. So, just keep that in mind if you are looking at dyeing your own skeins. And I did bring, let me skein this up because it's part of my project. I don't want it to get all messy and ratty, and everyone has had that one skein where they had to try to ball it up and it is all kinds of tangle. No one needs that stress in their life. But this is the company that I was talking about the last time, the UK-based company. So in here is 5 skeins, and on the front it'll tell you what it is. So this one is 100% untreated merino, and this is a DK weight. So I have a fingering weight for the Diomir sweater / cardigan. And this is DK weight, 225 meters to 100 grams, and it'll give you a batch number. So that's how it comes in there. And they're not connected. Each comes out as its own separate skein. And then what I do, forgot to mention this when I was holding it up. They usually come, let me show you a different section. They usually come pretty loosely pre-tied, so I'll leave that pre-tie in there just to save myself some extra time because it's not usually really tight, and then I'll just tie a piece of acrylic onto the end of it so that I can find it, because it is the natural wool, so it's going to dye with the skein. So just tie that to save you some extra time and to keep it, when it comes out, how it comes out. I think that's all that I wanted to talk about for that dyeing section. I was going to save that till the end, but we got that all knocked out. If you have any questions or comments about dyeing, or you have any resources about hand dyeing food safe yarn, leave a comment below. I would love to look at it. And then if you do have a question, I'm not claiming to be a pro at it, because I don't sell commercially, because I don't think I get enough consistency in my skeins to sell commercially, and it's not something I really want to do anyway. But if you have any questions, I'm not a pro, but we will get there together. I will help you as much as possible, or try to point you in the right direction, and we will come to an answer together. I am more than willing to have that conversation with you, or just share about my experiences with the different types of yarn with the different companies that I've used. There's more than the 2 companies that I've mentioned, but I think the 2 companies that I use, I get the most consistent when it comes like buying the same types of yarn. So I buy this untreated merino a lot, and it's usually pretty consistent with how it's spun, how well it's spun, and the meterage and grams that you get. But if you have any questions, feel free to leave me a comment or shoot me a message on Ravelry or Instagram. We will get the answers together. I would love to chat with you about it, because that's also something that I like doing. Did I show you? I think that's all that I have. Did I mention it was cropped? It's cropped. So I'm almost done. I think the last time I measured it, I was only like 2 or 3 inches from starting the ribbing. So I'm almost done with the ribbing portion, and then I'll be moving on to the sleeves. This one comes out March 22nd, so not too long after this one. And I'll again link to her page. I'll mention both of these and link to her Ravelry store, because neither one of them are released, so I can't link to my project page or to the pattern itself yet. If I remember, hopefully I'll come back and update it in the future. So if there's an updated in the description box that links to my project page or the actual pattern page, then feel free to click on that. But for now, when this pattern comes out, I'll just link to her store so that you can come back to this episode if you remember and grab it. Or if you follow her on Instagram, I'm sure she'll mention it there once it's released. My second test knit is for Hannah of the Tales of Yarnia. It is her Fairy Wisp shawl. I don't know if you follow her on Instagram, but she did send out some gorgeous pictures of that. This is my first time working with mohair, mainly because I don't think mohair and my hair would get along. Well, actually, what it is I think mohair and my hair will get along too much, and it will just be in my hair, and they'll marry together harmoniously, which is something I probably won't like. It'd be extra brushing that I'll have to do. But this is the Fairy Wisp shawl. So it has a wave lace section, and once I get it blocked, it'll look a whole bunch better, and I'll show you. But it has a wave lace section, and then eyelet sections, and then at the top it has another wave lace section. But these are all Hue Local yarns. The blue mohair is called Sapphire. The pink is called Flawless, and I don't think you'll be able to get it because this was a 2019 Yarn of the Month. And I love that blue in there. I think it goes so well with the mohair. And then this is one of her retiring colorways. I'm showing it to you the wrong way. So let's do that one more time. Wave lace, eyelets. This is her retiring colorway. It's called Bath Bomb. So you'll need, for this pattern, you'll need 2 fingering weight skeins, 100 grams, and then 1 50-gram lace weight mohair. So I think in the pattern you use 80 grams of each of the 100-gram fingering, and then I think you use like 39 or 40 grams of the mohair. So you'll have a little bit left, and depending on if I can work out some mass, I'll try to use all of it, because these are the only 2 skeins of this yarn that I have. So And I don't really knit socks anymore. I used to be a really big sock knitter, and I used to gift them out like left and right. And now I don't. Like, in my time as a knitter, I've probably knit 18 to 20 pairs of socks. My husband has 2, and I have 1, and I gifted the rest. And all of those pairs of socks was done in like a span of a year and a half. And then I just stopped knitting socks. I don't know why. So keeping the scraps for like heels and toes doesn't really work for me. And I'm not a scrap blanket person. I use one kind of blanket, and it's like the fleece blanket because it keeps me the warmest. So, but that's this, the wave lace section and the mini lace section. I do weave in my ends as I go, so once I get like 5 or 6 ends, I'll weave them in. I don't clip them flush until I block them. But in theory, now mind you, in theory, don't yell at me in the comments, but in theory, if you, in like these bigger garter sections, if you take the yarn and weave it in just one line through instead of going back and forth, and you weave it all the way through, you shouldn't have it poke out to the front. If you do clip it flush and it's blocked, it should never poke out to the front. I don't think I've had it happen maybe like once or twice, but again, I can't really remember if I did do the weaving in properly on that sweater or not, but popping through the front is not the end of the world. You just kind of clip it, as long as somebody doesn't try to come up and be like, oh, you got a thread. Don't do that to a knitter. But that's that. On here I have my Hitchhiker's Guide stitch marker. It says, don't panic and carry a towel. I keep it on the side that I do the increases on, just as a reminder, because I do a lot of TV knitting. So one of these rows I had to go back because I increased twice on the wrong side, and you could kind of see like it poked out where it wasn't supposed to. So I had to go back, and you know, mohair does not like to go back. So I made sure I wouldn't make that mistake again. But a lot of ends to weave in, but it is going to be a super nice shawl. I might give it away because of the mohair, but I do really like the pink. So if it turns out big enough and I can do the math to make it wide enough, I'll just use it as like a wrap in the summertime when I usually have my hair up anyway, and not as like a shawl like this. I am wearing Audrey of the Yarn Flakes, her Errol shawl. It is a cable and lace shawl. I hand dyed this yarn as well. Superwash, so you can kind of see that variegation in the different skeins. So I did, on one of these sides, I did the helico type knitting, so you can kind of see the variegation in the 2 different skeins. But I usually dye my yarn the same way for every skein. I have tried, there's a method, and I don't know that it has a name, but you take plastic wrap and you put the skein in the plastic wrap and put the dye directly in there and then heat the plastic wrap. I think 2 or 3 times I've tried this method. I put it in a pot with just like a little bit of water in the bottom and heated it that way, whereas you can kind of throw that into the microwave, but I don't have the greatest microwave. I think my microwave is like 10 years old. So you can put something in there for 3 minutes. If you have it in a soup bowl, the middle of your soup's not going to be warm. But it works. It gets the job done. And that's all that matters. Eventually you'll have food that is hot. So that's the Fairy Wisp shawl. Oh, let me show you how they look in the skein so you can kind of see. My ball winder's on the mend, but those are those 2 skeins. It gets the job done, and that's probably why I use the yarn cakes more often than not. But those are those skeins. Look at that pink, man. Just beautiful. The pink and the blue together. This skein, I think, was the reason I started ordering 2 skeins of her Yarns of the Month, because I would have loved to make like a shawl or some kind of colorwork sweater with this skein, but you can't really do that with just the one. I mean, you can, but you might be playing yarn chicken in the end. And I like to do whatever contrast color. If I'm doing a color work, I like to do whatever contrast color as the collar. So I would definitely be playing Yarn Chicken with that. And then my work in progress. So like I said, it was about 3 or 4 days. Audrey had sent out her test knit, and then I saw that Hannah had a test knitting call probably like a day or two after Audrey had sent hers. So I got about 4 or 5 days of the sparkling leaf sweaters done, but it's not a lot. And I'll just show you the cakes because it's like 2 inches of color work. But this is the gray. Is Knit Picks Gloss Fingering. It's a 70% merino, 30% silk. And then this wonderful, wonderful fingering weight skein is from Mitchell's Creations, and it's called Moonflower, and that is a 75/25, and it's a super wash. And I just love these colors. Maybe I will show you, just so you can see how well it's coming out. I'm loving the way it's coming out. And then once I have more work, you'll be able to see that wonderful leaf pattern a little bit better. But this is the back. It does have short row shaping at the back. And then this is my steek. So right there is that steek, but you can see how those colors are coming out. It's going to be great. If I would have thought about it a little bit better, I probably would have used a lighter gray, but I'm not mad at the gray that I did choose. Originally, when I had talked about this, I was going to use Hue Local yarn, but when I swatched for it, I just didn't like the way that the colors were going together and how they played with each other. So the way that the color speckling variegation was going on, it was too sharp of a contrast, so you weren't getting like between each, it wasn't melding, in my opinion, very well. So that's why I switched to that Mitchell's Creation fibers. But I think that's it for works in progress. I do want to talk about, it's not necessarily an acquisition because I had my eye on it for a while. I just had to wait because it was this Farm to Skein yarn from Melissa of Knitting the Stash. It's her Shorn yarn. It is 50% Cordell, 50% Cordell Teeswater, locally grown in Illinois at Seven Sisters Farm, milled in Michigan at Stonehenge Fiber Mill. It's approximately 250 yards for 4 ounces, 3-ply sport weight. So I want to do my own dyeing on this one before I make it into something that's going to be awesome. But for something like this that has like a gray-brown undertone, I like to do warmer colors because that gray-brown is going to add so much depth to the color that you can usually blend with an acid dye, but with food safe dyes it's kind of hard to get that depth, especially if you're doing natural dye. Natural dye, it takes so much time and practice to add the depth that you want, that you see in your head that you want to put on the skein into that. But if you use something that already has like a warm brown or gray undertone to it, it's going to come out really nice. So it hasn't told me exactly what color it wants to be. I'm thinking either a mauve or a blue, a warm blue, or a purple. I have made, not like this purple, but a warmer type purple. But I have made a purple before that had this kind of background to it. And again, this was a trial and error type thing. So when I did do the purple, I was expecting something different, but I wasn't disappointed on how it came out. It was I want to say yak and silk. It was mostly yak, but the yak was like this kind of color undertone. So when I dyed it the purple, it had this wonderful depth to it, and I wish I'd have thought about it because I don't even know where it is right now to show you. But if I remember, I'll take a picture of it and add it in here. But it had just the wonderful, warmest undertone to it, and I really liked how it came out. And I only got one skein of that, and had I known what I know now, I would have gotten two. But I only got one, and I'm making, I know where it is. It's in the car, because that's my emergency if I forget knitting or anything like that, because I only have the one skein, so I'm just doing like your basic triangle shawl with increases, and where it ends is where it ends. No intricate lace or anything like that, because I don't want to have to calculate math. No one likes that. But this is that shorn yarn that Melissa had. I think she has some left. If she does, I will put it in the links down below. Either way, I'll probably link to her blog just so you can see what it is and when they're planning on coming out with it next, if they are. She does have 2 patterns that go with it. So the patterns are available on Ravelry, I believe. So if you can find something that's similar to this, then you can definitely make the pattern. Let me see if I can find the names of the pattern. So I did find the names of the patterns, and they're the traveling hat and mitts, and they're a nice cable pattern. Both of them use up one of these skeins, so if you have, again, something that's equivalent to this, you can definitely, if you can't get the shorn yarn, you can definitely find something that will work with those 2 skeins. They're wonderfully cabled hat and mitten set, so if that's for you, then definitely check that out. I don't do mittens, and as I talked about last time, I don't really do hats, but when I buy mittens, I usually get like the dollar store or like the ones they sell at the grab racks in Joann's, and I'll get like 4 or 5 pairs of those. So when I lose one, I can just substitute that other one, and no one's the wiser that I'm not great keeping track of my mittens. I definitely still need that toddler string that you stick through the jacket where it keeps your mittens with your stuff, because I'm notorious for losing a glove or 2. But that's why I life hack do that. I just get a whole bunch of the same kind of mittens, whether it's striped or yellow or blue. I just get whatever, how much they have left of that, and that's what I'll use for the season. But Traveling Hits hat and mitt set, with each of them use one of these skeins, but if you can find something to use with it, then have at it. So I am wrapping up, because I think that is everything that I wanted to talk about today. So I wanted to give some special thanks to a couple of other podcasters that helped me and gave me great feedback on my podcast and different things I could change and do better and everything like that. So thank you, ladies. The first one is Hannah from the Tales of Yarnia. So thank you. Your feedback was wonderful. Thank you for your shout outs that you gave me on Instagram and in your podcast. I really do appreciate it. The second is Melissa from Knitting the Stash. She and I have talked since, I think it was last year. Yeah, last year time frame. So we're internet buddies, and she doesn't live that far from me. It's definitely a doable like weekend trip. So hopefully one of these days we can meet in real life. But thank you again, Melissa, for giving me a shout out on your podcast and encouraging me to do this, because I had mentioned before that I think I wanted to start a podcast, and she was kind of one of the people that was like, you definitely should, and I do appreciate that. The other is Audrey from the Yarn Flakes. So I want to thank you for giving me a shout out as well, and thank you for giving us awesome knits. She's a genius in what she does. And the last but not least is Ellie from Curio Yarns. She has been helping me do this and kind of helping give me some encouraging words. We do a virtual knit night, so if you ever want to join us on that, definitely leave a comment below and I'll get her your information, because she organizes it. But we do a virtual knit night. She is in England, so it's like daytime for me and nighttime for her. So just keep that in mind if you are one of those people in either location. So I think it's 6 or 7 o'clock her time and noon my time, and we either do it like Friday or Saturday. So if you're not available at noon on a Friday, it probably won't work for you. But if you are interested, we'll try to see if we can work you in there, because we love chatting and meeting new people. And she usually spins and I'll knit, and we'll just chat and hang out for a little while. One of those people I hope to meet in real life. Maybe if they start doing Edinburgh back again, we can meet up there or something like that. And I would love to meet all of these people in real life, but sometimes it's not financially or feasible for me to do such. I have a 13-year-old dog that can't be left alone. I have a husband that works 18-hour days. So maybe, God forbid, but maybe when he passes, I'll definitely can make some transatlantic trips and go see some of those people in real life. But if you made it this far, thank you again for joining me. Thank you for making it this far, and thank you for continuing to support me in something that I wanted to do and that's outside of my comfort zone. This podcast was definitely a little bit easier than the last podcast, and I feel like all of you that left comments down below, I feel like we know each other now, and it's like talking with friends. So if you left a comment before, I would love to chat with you again, and you feel free to message me on any of the platforms that I am on, Instagram and Ravelry, brain fart for a second, and I would love to chat with you. So that's the end of it for me today, and I'll be speaking with you in about 2.5, 3 weeks. But thank you for joining me again, and have a wonderful, wonderful, wonderful week. Bye.